Good morning, Kim Brassor, One Voice Evolving Podcast. I'm your host. We are 15 episodes into this, and it looks like I'm really going to show up every week and find something magical to share with you. My life has been punctuated by leaps of faith and seasons of surrender. But what happens in the middle of every one of those is what I call the messy middle. Some people call it burnout, some people call it depression. Some people distract with that. I have learned to call it God's waiting room, and it is my least favorite part of the process. When you first go to a seminar or you learn a new skill or you encounter a new adventure like we are in our 60 something days now before election cycle, one voice evolving is shifting into one vote evolving as we consider what's possible for us as we consider what could happen when women come together in a way they never have, and they see each other in a way they've never seen. And then what's reflected back to them is different than they have ever allowed in. It changes you. And women, particularly, we change internally before you see it happen on the outside. Men in midlife go get a red sports car. Women in midlife change their hairstyle, or they change their decor, or they change spouses. Um, so I don't know where you are in your part of the journey, but today's episode is me bringing you up to speed with where I am. I am so blessed to be in a season of life that allows me the time, the resources, and the energy to see things differently and to continue to learn and grow and expand. When you take a leap of faith into or out of a marriage, into or out of a career field, into or out of a project, a passion project, in the beginning, it's all sunshine and roses and light and wonderfulness. And somewhere 3 to 6 months in, or if it's a short timeline, like our election timeline, when we only had 124 days to begin with, there's always a panic point. There's a point of no return where you can either choose to stay the course, keep taking the baby steps, keep imagining what the outcome could be. What's your best possible outcome? Focus on the solution, and the solution increases. When we focus on the problem, the fears, the what ifs, the hopelessness, it's never going to change. One voice, one vote isn't really going to matter. They don't want to count them all anyway. When we get into that place, that takes us back the slippery slope to our comfort zone. But it's kind of like recovery. Once you see behind the curtain, you can't unsee it. Once you see what addiction is doing to you and your life and your loves, you can no longer go back to that little bubble you had where it was just one drink too many and a no harm, no foul. You know better. And you might try to go back, but it never feels the same. Once we have been exposed to the reality of not Democrat, Republican, but democracy versus theocracy or fascism, once we see behind the curtain of what's really going on, there's no going back. We can't pretend we don't know what we know, see what we see, and feel what we feel. We might try to do all the things, but the best thing we can do if we feel like quitting is to just take one baby step back. Don't chuck it all and go back to what your old comfort zone was, because it's not going to be comfortable anymore. You're going to have to try it maybe, but there's no going home, honey, once you've been there. Once you've had a little freedom, once you've had some connection, you're never going to enjoy your solitude quite the same. So sometimes people are burning out. They're burning out because there's too much change too quickly. It's too demanding because we didn't see what we didn't see until we did, and then it overwhelmed us because we are afraid of the same thing happening that's always happened before. And people don't move or change until the pain of where they are is greater than the fear of where they're going. And the fear of where we're going right now, if we don't grab hold of this democracy in this one final battle, is greater than the pain of staying in the fight for 63 more days. And so every day I consider, where's my energy level? Where's my support system? What one baby step can I take today that is going to keep me moving forward in the stated goal of voting blue down the ballot? Now I can stop right now and I can take my one voice, one vote, and I can follow through on that and let the rest of the world be damned. But that's not what I'm called to do. And for me, that would be putting my light under a bushel and not letting it be seen. That's never been who I was designed for. And it's not going to be me now. In the waiting room, when you're not sure which way to go, when you've come far, I've done the postcards, I've mailed them out, I've been on calls, I have supported Black and white entrepreneurs, I have learned from the best of the best. And there comes a point when ever learning and never coming to an understanding that the truth is as bad as being lukewarm. Once you know better, you're expected to do better. And if you think that head knowledge is enough, that's that white supremacy bubble. Because in my white skin, nobody ever has to know. Black skin can never get away from it. So in the messy middle, what I call God's waiting room, you have one job, and that is to wait. That's your job. Keep breathing and wait for direction, inspiration, rehabilitation, healing, so that you can step back up to the front lines. The problem is we, as women and as white women, don't ask for help when we need it. We muscle up and push through and bootstrap it and pretend, or we distract, or we take care of everybody except ourselves until we have nothing left to give. That is not what's going to get you to the end result you want in 64 days in this country. What's going to get you there is waiting to be renewed and expecting to be renewed and looking for signs of life in yourself internally, and then so you can give. We can't pour from an empty cup, but we can't sit and take in, take in, take in, and never give, because now we're a Dead Sea. We're not good for anything. There's no life there. So how do we stay joyful and purposeful and engaged when it gets hard? And they said it would get hard, didn't they? And we said, oh yeah, I'm up for it, I'm hard, because there were 164,000 of us on a call. But there's not 164,000 of us in my bedroom in the morning when I'm trying to wrestle with going down and being seen in a canvassing effort. There's only me, a higher power, and my inner dialogue. Inner dialogue. That's the one that gets me every time. And that's the one that's causing the division and the fear and the pulling back that we're seeing in some of these factions of support for Kamala Harris. Is the inner dialogue. It's the internalized biases. It's the fear of where we're going or what we might lose if we dare, instead of what we might gain. So sometimes in God's waiting room, you feel like it's burnout. like you just don't have anything left to give. You have no energy. And your only job there is to allow yourself to step off the battlefield and rest, regroup, replenish your supplies until it's your turn to be called up again. We who overfunction push through pain instead of asking for help. It's exhausting. I feel you. And I suggest that you rest and wait and wait and wait. Because when it comes back, when it's time for you to go back to the front line, you will have everything you need to show up full uniform and do the next thing before you. You don't have to feel bad for needing respite. And you don't have to feel bad for leaving the front line. You did your part. Now you fall back. Let somebody else do their part. When it's your part again, you'll be called up. No worries. You won't miss the call. God's faithful like that. I see a lot of people in various stages of deconstruction or reconstruction in their belief systems right now. People who've always been Republican, and I was one of those until about 2020, who have values and who have voted their values, who think that they have no choice but to keep voting the single value, whatever their most important single value is, instead of looking at the broader picture and who are Christian, deconstructing their Christian beliefs. Oh gosh, I have worked with years for people understanding their toxic understanding of God and how that's impacted their life and how to reframe or regroup or rethink that. This is more of the same. This is a dramatic shift in our culture, but in ourselves individually. And it means re-examining many of the things we've believed up to this point. My understanding of God shifted dramatically post-menopause and post-divorce. I am much more pragmatic now. No more Santa dreams and shallow toxic positivity. And I am happy, and I am far less defensive and far less black and white adamant about how everybody ought to be living their life. One of the things about 12-step recovery is live and let live. And I've seen a real fall from grace on the part of so many people I've been close to over my life, because they've doubled down on one way, the right way, my way, one God, the right God, my God, one value, the right value, my value, and blame shifting and shaming if you don't live up to that expectation. Now, people of color have dealt with this for centuries in our white supremacist society, but we in our little white bubbles, this is new to us. And we're just getting a tip of a taste of what that's like. And we don't like it. We don't like it much at all. And so the whole grieving process that has to happen in the waiting room is going through the denial and the bargaining. Maybe if I do this, maybe if I do that, we won't have to lose the thing I'm so afraid we're going to lose. To depression, which is what takes you to the waiting room. God, you're going to talk to me or I'm not moving. You're going to move me or it's not going to get done. Until finally we get to acceptance. And from the sake of acceptance, then we can choose again freely what path we want to take for ourselves. But peer pressure is so great. And so the first thing, my first recommendation to our listeners is to find your tribe, find your vibe, find yourself in this. You find by doing, you don't find by ruminating. You don't find by looking back. You find by looking within and looking ahead. You keep your eyes off of that scary landing zone below, and you focus on the very next step. That's never too much, sufficient into this day, one day at a time. You can get 63 days ahead till election day, till we shift the planet. It's entirely possible, and it's essential. Life's a bitch sometimes, and no platitudes are going to soothe an open wound. You have to go to the infirmary. You have to be in the waiting room. You have to lean into the pain instead of try to distract from it with shopping or eating or drinking or political engagement or social media scrolling. You have to lean into the pain. You have to feel the fear, and give yourself a break to take as long as it takes for your for alignment to happen from your head to your heart. And do you see I did that? Your head to your heart, because your head, your gut, and your brain are all part of the same system. We always try to think our way out of feeling bad. It doesn't work that way. And you can't pretend, act as if, get you into a mask situation. But by the time you're at the age we are, I'm not going to mask. I remember one of Barbara Streisand's movies, and the line was, "I will not be crazy, not for you or you or you or you. My truth is my truth. I know what I know. I am who I am, and I won't mask up to make you feel better." We've spent our whole lives masking up, and we're not going back. Will the sun shine in your life again? Most likely. Will you emerge from the cocoon a butterfly with wings? Entirely possible. With a new appreciation of our fleeting life and limited control. Fly, baby, fly. Today is all we have. My revised belief is that the only story that matters is the story we tell ourselves. And so deconstructing that means you listen, you write down, a good woman should, a good daughter should, a good mother should, whatever. And then you just write all the things that you believe. And if you don't dissect them along the way, you simply write them out, you're going to be stunned to find out how many corners you have painted yourself into, or how many voices there are in there who have painted you into a corner, because somebody, when you were 4, put in one set of beliefs, and when you were 14, somebody else put in another set, and you just have assimilated and incorporated and made that story to the point where no matter what you do, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If I move forward toward racial equity, then I could lose my white privilege positioning. If I don't, then I could lose my self-respect. What do you do? Those double binds, we are full of double binds, and we are unconscious of them. So the first thing we want to do is bring the unconscious conscious, and writing makes it real. I encourage it all the time. And get involved in whatever support group, whatever tribe, whatever group of people you can, who will see that and allow that and help facilitate that from the fullness of who you are, not from the fear of who you might look like. Does that make any sense to you? If we don't sit with it in the waiting room, if we don't sit with this pain, with this uncertainty, and allow ourselves to feel the fear so that we can do it anyway, then it's just like physical therapy. I had a frozen shoulder once, and it took 6 months of 3 times a week at a very gifted sports chiropractor to heal that without surgery. It was a pain. It was a pain. I wanted to quit a lot of times. I especially wanted to quit the day you broke loose the scar tissue. Oh, that was awful. But it wasn't until the big pain of breaking loose the scar tissue that my shoulder actually had the freedom to heal. And it has healed beautifully. And I have had no problems for years and years and years. Don't be afraid of the pain. Don't be afraid to lean in. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to let go and let it happen. There are so many of us who don't share our secret shame around living less than perfect Christian lives. And nobody lives a perfect Christian life, but dang, we mask well in the church, don't we? I used to do speaking engagements in churches in Las Vegas. And one of my favorite topics was toxic shame, dysfunctional families and the Christian response, toxic faith, healing the shame that binds us. It's not outer things that bind us. We carry it all inside. We do this to ourselves. It's like a child who's afraid of the boogeyman in the closet. The truth is, it only lives in their head, but it's real to them, and it better be real to you when you come in to comfort them, because you have to meet people where they are, not with your elevated understanding of there's nothing to worry about. Isolation is the true shame because it keeps us from being seen. It keeps us from being open, and it keeps us from feeling loved. When what you love is my persona, and I know, and I'm living a double life that you don't know about, then there's no healing in that. There's only more masking and more running to keep up, and more fabricating along the way. It is my heart's desire, and always has been, to create a safe place for women to find healing and compassionate support for the messy middles of life. Right now, for these 64 days between Kamala Harris announcing a run for presidency and voting and ascending to the presidency in January of 2025, we're in some messy middle. We're in the messy middle. And we are all God's emissaries, and we are all in God's waiting room. Everybody has a role. Everybody has a part to play, no matter how small, support or frontline. There isn't one voice that's more valuable than another. There's not one vote that matters more than another. I don't care what they try to say about it. You know you, and you know the truth. And the best thing that I can do today is help women get unstuck in their messy middle, face their fears so they can keep going, so that we not only don't lose momentum in the next 64 days, but so that we have built such relationship and community that we are ready to move now beyond this election cycle and into the real changes in the culture to sustain it for the generations to come. Because after all, that's why I'm here. So that said, I am here to tell you that the first most important thing that I did in getting comfortable in waiting room was I stopped all the extra noise. So I curated my feeds on all social media. I stopped checking all social media and picked my top two. I decided where I'm going to get my news and how much of it I'm going to consume, and have been supporting multiple creators different ways and learning myself. But not every creator is for me, and I'm not for everybody. And so I found the places where I was the most nurtured, the most supported, the most comfortable, and the most challenged, because I'm not comfortable without a challenge. And I'm here to share that with you. And it is called the RAARE Woman Collective. And that's RAARE, RAARE, rarewomancollective.com. And right now, they have entry points that are incredibly affordable and incredibly useful. Lots of connection, lots of community, boots on the ground inside into what works for white women who struggle with advancing racial equity. If you weren't conscious of the need for advancing racial equity in our lifetime before, it certainly has heightened our awareness. And there are ways for you to start taking action today. The biggest thing that stops white women from engaging in any social change movement and sustaining it is the fear of saying the wrong thing. We're not perfect. We don't want to, and we get attacked from both sides. Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started with family functions. We don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to make mistakes. We don't think we know enough. We get overwhelmed, easily overwhelmed sometimes. And that's frustrating for our Black and Brown sisters who live their lives at a stress level that the DSM has decided would be crazy making. So on September 17 and 18, from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Dr. Nikki Lanier at the RAARE Woman Collective is having a town hall summit. And it's just 2 hours. It's like $25. And it's a Zoom platform. And so you will be on with like-minded women who are ready to get insight and walk away with tools to immediately start making an impact. It might be just enough for you to nudge you off of center and get you doing the next round of whatever it is you feel called to do to help move this needle for the November 5th election. Don't miss it. Don't overlook it. Check it out. Again, it's the RAARE, RAARE Woman Collective.com, and join the community.